is that time of year again, iPhone season. Let's check out all of the little differences and performance differences between an iPhone 13 Pro and an iPhone 14 Pro. Welcome everybody to Apple Insider. It is Andrew here, and you have probably heard there's a new iPhone on the block. We have the new iPhone 14 series this year, and I have been testing out all day the iPhone 14 Pro. It is a pretty incredible piece of kit, if I do say so myself. And in this video, I'm going to be comparing that new iPhone 14 Pro to my existing iPhone 13 Pro. I'm going to walk you through all the changes in hardware, as well as the performance differences, and even a camera comparison. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's start comparing Apple's iPhone 13 Pro against the brand new iPhone 14 Pro. The iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro each have a 6.1-inch OLED Pro Display XDR. They look really similar. They have the same resolution, the same pixel density, all of that. So what are the differences? Well, of course you've heard of the dynamic island, that new little pill-shaped cutout on the top of the display. It can do all sorts of fun stuff, like show when you're in an app, background activities, music playing, navigation, voice memos, screen recordings, your AirPods connecting, charging status, all sorts of things. It can even tie into live activities from third-party applications, at least when iOS 16.1 begins shipping. But there's other difference as well besides that really cool dynamic island. Other changes include new peak brightness, but it can get all the way up to 2,000 nits of brightness when you are outside. I did take my iPhone 14 Pro outside next to my iPhone 13 Pro, maxed out the brightness manually, and there is a significant difference between these two devices. It is much easier to see an iPhone 14 Pro in the sun than the iPhone 13 Pro. Hey, before we get too far into this, I have to thank my sponsor for this video and one of my all-time favorite case manufacturers for years, Alto. Alto has an entire lineup of incredible leather cases for all of Apple's latest iPhones. All of Alto's cases use incredibly high-quality Italian aniline dyed leathers that fit your iPhone like a glove, and frankly, feel like they have better leather quality than Apple's own cases. Some cases have built-in pockets on the back, perfect for storing your cards. You can store several cards in the back of your iPhone case and always have them with you without having to worry about a detachable wallet or an external wallet to bring along for the ride. If you'd prefer a smooth back case, don't worry, Alto now supports MagSafe, a big addition over their iPhone 13 cases that did not have MagSafe. I am so excited that MagSafe is now built in. It's just one of many little touches that stand Alto's cases apart from the rest. I also love the metal accents on the side. They use anodized aluminum buttons the same way Apple does with their cases. They fit your iPhone so well, protect all of the sides. There's a raised edge around the camera bump. Alto's cases come in several different styles, including plain back, MagSafe support, the pocket, as well as a lanyard version. If you want to check out any of these, visit Alto's website. It is linked down below in the description. Thank you again to Alto for sponsoring this video. Another difference is the iPhone 14 Pro has an always-on display. See, I'm going to turn it off and you'll still see the time right there on the screen. If I tap it to wake it up, it gets brighter. It'll dim your display automatically when in this kind of standby mode, and it does so by reducing the refresh rate all the way down to 1 Hz, 1 refresh a second, which can significantly save battery life. Of course, it can go up to 120 Hz, just like with the iPhone 13 Pro, that ProMotion display that can ramp up and down intelligently based on whatever it is that you're doing. Some people have posited that the iPhone 14 Pro's display that's always on is a little too on, but personally, I like it. I think it's just the right amount of brightness. You can see your widgets at all time. You can see your custom backgrounds. I very much like the new always on display, but if you're not a fan, you still can go into settings and turn it off. The bodies of the two phones are pretty similar. There's not a big difference in changes here, except for the fact that the iPhone 14 Pro has an even larger camera bump. Yeah, it's grown in size from the iPhone 13 Pro, which was already a pretty big camera bump. But everything else, the same. Still the lightning port at the bottom with the speaker and the microphones. We still have the same buttons on the side, though Apple did remove the SIM card tray and is now eSIM only, at least here in the US. Apple says they've improved the thermal design of an iPhone 14 Pro. It's a little bit hard to test, but it should run a little bit cooler, especially for strenuous tasks like playing games, editing videos, or running a whole bunch of benchmark videos. Both devices support 5G, but the iPhone 14 Pro has some new capabilities. It also supports Bluetooth 5.3 and has satellite communication that'll be coming later this year, allowing you to get help when you need it most and you're out of cellular range. Inside of the iPhone 14 Pro is Apple's newest A16 Bionic processor. It's more capable than the A15 Bionic processor that's still in the basic iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus. But how does it score in benchmarks? Booting up Geekbench 5, we got an 1880 on the single core and a 5317 on the multi-core on the new iPhone 14 Pro. The iPhone 13 Pro, in comparison, got a 1723 and a 4658, a definite improvement for that multi-core score. On the Geekbench 5 graphics test, we also saw similar improvements on the A16 Bionic. The iPhone 14 Pro scored a 15379, which is nearly 1,000 more points than the 14401 medal score on the iPhone 13 Pro. The last benchmark that I wanted to test in this video was the Antutu benchmark that runs through a whole suite of different tests to give you one cumulative score. The iPhone 14 did fantastic here with a massive increase. iPhone 13 Pro scored a 767,863, whereas the iPhone 14 Pro scored an 897,708. The CPU score wasn't all that different, but the memory, graphics, and UX tests all did significantly better on an iPhone 14 Pro. Using it day to day so far has not been a ton of difference. They're still both very speedy devices, and I don't think you're going to notice a huge difference between an iPhone 14 Pro and an iPhone 13 Pro in your typical day-to-day tasks. So what about the cameras? This is another big upgrade for the iPhone 14 Pro series. Apple has really upgraded pretty much all of the cameras on the iPhone 14 Pro in different ways. For starting out with the wide-angle lens, that's the biggest jump. Apple moved from a 12 megapixel sensor to a 48 megapixel sensor. Now, you can shoot 48 megapixels in RAW mode, but typically you're still going to get 12 megapixel photos. It's just going to combine, using pixel binning, 4 pixels into one super megapixel. This should drastically improve low light photography. In my early test, I definitely saw an improvement, though it wasn't a substantial one. Most people are still going to benefit from learning how to take better photos than just jumping onto the latest iPhone and thinking that everything is going to be miraculously, massively better. That said, it still definitely helps. The photos do look better. Low light photography is better, and it just seems like it's faster to focus in those low light situations. And overall, I've seen a bit less noise. Another benefit is that you can now shoot at 2x zoom without any loss of quality. You get to use that wide angle lens for 2x zoom because there's now 48 megapixels to still get a 12 megapixel photo. You're essentially getting all the benefits of that wide angle sensor than the telephoto lens, which is still capped at 3 times of optical zoom. So now you have 0.5 for your ultra wide, you have 1 for your standard wide lens, 2 times optical zoom for your wide lens, and 3 times optical zoom for your telephoto lens. I think people are really going to like having that 2 times optical zoom without any loss of quality compared to having to switch to the telephoto lens, which just isn't always as good as that standard wide lens. One of my favorite new features of the iPhone 14 Pro, though, is the improvements to cinematic mode. I took Mosby out into the yard and started shooting some cinematic mode videos, and there's a big difference over how they look with an iPhone 13 Pro. Apple has been improving cinematic mode for some time on the iPhone 13 Pro, but it's much better on an iPhone 14 Pro because you can now shoot in 4K resolution, as well as 24 or 30 frames per second at that resolution. It's amazing, and it makes a big difference when shooting video. It doesn't look as grainy or as low resolution on a larger display because before you could only shoot at 1080. Now that you can shoot in 4K, it looks so much better. Just look at the sample video of Mosby playing with his ball in the yard. It looks so much better than it did on an iPhone 13 Pro. There are a couple other minor differences between an iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro. There's a new color available, this new bright purple color, and the blue has gone away. It's nice, but you still don't notice it all that much. It's not a vibrant hue of purple like it would be for an iPhone 14 base model that has some brighter colors. It's still very much a darker grayish with kind of a purple hint going on. It's not nearly as vibrant as I'm sure some people want. Apple also increased the battery life by a bit, another hour or two depending on what you're doing. I'll always take more battery life, even if it isn't a massive deal more than the prior generation. Another neat feature is the iPhone 14 Pro has crash detection, which can help save your life in an accident. And this is also featured on the latest version of the Apple Watch. So that pretty much sums it up. I think there are a couple game-changing features coming to the iPhone 14 Pro to make it feel a bit more newer and fresher than years past. The new always-on display and dynamic island are incredible to use and make a big difference actually when you're using the phone. The camera is also a really nice upgrade, especially that 48 megapixel wide-angle sensor. It is very nice and a definite improvement for low-light photography. If you're a huge iPhone user, it might be worth the upgrade. What do you guys think? Let me know the differences down below in the comments or on Twitter at Andrew_OSU if you'd like to grab iPhone 14 Pro. There's some links and deals down below in the description.